Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys Jack, Dave, and we have Jacob from USA Spurs, United Spurs of America. You might recognize him who was holding it down on the post-match fan shows, but we've decided to lock him inside a cage with us to chat about Spurs, chat about everything that maybe just went on with the preseason, as always as well. Probably speculate a bit too much, from it, and draw too many conclusions. But that's what we love doing over here. And Jacob, how are you keeping this morning, my friend? And I think you're fresh off a nice walk with the dog. Did you have any fresh kind of Spurs thoughts or any new Spurs revelations while outside in the Texas heat?
Out in the Texas heat, sweating, looking like Arsenal players versus MLS All Stars last night in DC. They were all sweating. The humidity was getting to them. My main lately, I wake up every day, Jack, and I'm just real hopeful. I have a lot of hope for my Tottenham Hotspurs. I have a lot of hope with Ange Postecoglou that he can get things right. I've been referring to him as a gold miner. You know, a guy in the Colorado streams, Jack, with the pail, and they're sifting through the mud. They're scooping mud, water, rocks, and they're sifting it, looking for gold pebbles. I've equated Ange Postecoglou with being the man to do that well and to figure out just who are stones, who is gold here, and who he can buff and shine. So I have faith in him. Every day I wake up too blessed to be stressed, and very fortunate to be here. So thanks for having me, both of you.
Yeah, it's good to have you, Dave. And any fresh Spurs revelations? And do you feel like Ange Postecoglou is going to find any gold nuggets in that river that of Spurs? Because I'll be honest, they're going to be a lot of just stone cold, nothingness that he's going to be picking up.
Yeah, look, well, I finally got my centre back today, right? So that means I have to shut up, right? No, I don't. Look, on the centre back, just quickly, he's a good guy, good signing
Mr.
for,
Phillips.
for the academy. He's played some men's football already, which is a huge plus. And I'll be looking forward to seeing him and Darrington's under 21 partnership this season. It's going to be absolutely immense. But, Jack, what I took away from today, the Golden Nuggets, is we still need centre backs for the senior team.
I did sign Ashley Phillips on a Leighton Orient career mode, Dave, and I looked up in I think some sort of FIFA like accumulator, whatever like best highest rated center backs under a certain price that Leighton Orient could afford, and he happened to be the guy that was sort of at the top of the list with a very high potential. So that's my scouting report that I can give you on Ashley Phillips, and he I think played quite well for me, for that Leighton Orient career mode, which I think I sort of ended by the time I reached, the championship. I got a little bored. But anything that, you might know about the guy, I guess he's very tall, good on the ball, sounds like he has all the good attributes, but maybe one for the future, I guess.
Yeah, he is one for the future. He's an absolute giant, Jack. He's 6'4", and Jake was saying, he still has room and time to grow. He's an England underage international as well, and I know he's very highly thought of. And look, this is not one that's plucked out of thin air. This is one that Spurs were interested in last summer. I think Blackburn were looking for about 10 to 15 million, and Tottenham didn't want to offer that up. But because of the financial problems at Blackburn, Tottenham, of course, seized the opportunity and went in and got their guy for 3 million. But,
Yeah, and that's our style.
I get a lot of people, around it will go, look, we need centre backs for the senior team. And 100% I get it. I don't agree with signing, youngsters for that under 21 team when we've already got such insane talent there when we need them for the senior team. But what I will say is what I do like about is you can pair Darrington and Phillips together, let them develop together in that under 21 side. Like I said before, they're going to be training and playing like the senior team anyway. So that'll close the gap on the gap going forward. And then hopefully you will see the two of them come through as a partnership and make their way into that Spurs team. And that can be our backbone in the future. So although it's not directly what we need now, it is a very, very good signing for the future. And I'm liking the idea of Phillips and Darrington pairing each other.
Spurs taking advantage of the market, Jacob. It's kind of classic. It's our style. What do you make of us sort of taking advantage of Blackburn, while they're down, kicking them while they're down? We've taken their most talented center back.
I have no problem with it. Dylan Markandé went the other way. I'm still a little salty about that. So long may it rain. But like you said, David, the kid's 6'4", 18 years old. He's going to be growing for another 6 years. physically. He could be 6'4", 6'6" by the time he's done growing. And I looking a little bit into him, his heat map suggests he occupies a similar spaces to Romero. So at best, you could say maybe this is a Romero backup, because I don't know where Tanganga fits in after seeing yesterday. I don't know where Sanchez can fit in. I know there's a few clubs into him, but Ashley Phillips, I'm never going to complain when we go to the championship and pull quality out from there, or attempt to do so, because for me, I've always felt like that is a league in which we don't occupy a lot of thought there. We don't occupy a lot of scouts and really look for these gems there, because I watch a championship. Jack, you know, it's on ESPN Plus. If you got ESPN Plus, you can watch championship games. That's where I first saw Ivan Toney, and I was like, we got to go get Ivan Toney. They end up coming up to the Premier League. Now everyone's saying Ivan Toney, even though he gambled, let's still get him, right? So I'm not going to be upset about us doing this business. I worry that it is a little bit of a a sock for the haters to wear, in the sense of, oh, this is typical Spurs, we're going to go and do the cheap option, et cetera, et cetera. But it's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't, in my opinion. If we don't do this, then you have folks like me saying, why aren't we pulling and looking for young cats out the championship? And Ashley Phillips could be one of them bright spots to come out of the championship. So I like the business, Jack, personally.
I like that answer, to be fair, Dave. I was just going to, kind of also respond to the fact that a lot of us have also criticized, right, Spurs for not going after these maybe guys that are right in our backyard, right, in the championship or in League One. But also we've said in the past, where's like the academy, sort of talent? Where are the younger talents coming from? And I think Parachichi did, a pretty good job at bringing in some more younger talented, maybe first team players. But there were also a lot of guys that were sort of brought in the background as well, like the Jude Sunsup Bell, as well as other players that, sort of have been invested in, to be brought into the academy. So this could also be kind of seen as that sort of trend as well. A lot of these players that are very much for the future, but we won't be as worried about, younger talent not being there.
What I like about the recruitment over the last couple of seasons, Jack, in the academy is that, the academy hasn't produced, a lot of great sort of English products. And what you're seeing lately is like Sunsup Bell, they're pulling from a top academy from Chelsea. They brought in Herbie James from a top academy from City. They brought in Will Lancashire, who's very, very highly rated from the Sheffield United Academy. So they're pulling some players from some of the best academies around. But they're also mixing that in with guys who already have experience in men's football. They got Callum Logan from Ipswich Town arrived this summer. You got Ashley Phillips, the boy we just signed now. Charlie Sayers, we signed, and he had some first team experience. You've got now Piscozzi, a full international in there, and now playing in there. So what you're starting to see is, us also filter them players from top academies around in with guys that have already experience in men's football. So it's not going to be anything new to them when they do make that step up. So it does seem like smart sort of strategic recruitment, and I'm liking it. Mix that in with what we've already got, what's demonstrated, that what's coming true. I'm excited for the future.
You could even look at it, if you were to be super happy clappy or hopium kind of like myself, would be a Alfie Devine type signing, right? A guy that eventually a few years down the road will sort of come into the team and be a real talent to be able to work with. And even actually with his sort of recent, match against West Ham, I thought he actually really didn't, stick out like a sore thumb at all. He actually sort of really was able to keep up with the pace and sort of the quality, I thought, of the rest of the players that were on the pitch, which I was kind of impressed by, considering I think how young he still is. But maybe we could just sort of transition into that, just kind of first impressions on that friendly. Jacob, I mean, any players that you wanted to get started off with? I know you were very impressed with a certain Manor Solomon, and
Mr. I think Mayor, the Mayor. I'm working on a nickname or something catchy for Manor Solomon.
Exactly, we already have them done that.
Yeah, see, I know I like to at least throw a couple suggestions into the hat for whenever, because obviously you got the likes of Heel Messi. That's a top class name. No one's touching that. So I'm hoping for the next gym to come out with this Solomon thing. But really, Jack, when I talked to you yesterday offline a little bit, I said this Manor Solomon guy, he showed me enough in 45 minutes. That is more than what I've seen from Bryan Gil in 13 Premier League matches. Wow. That's not counting Bryan Gil's cup matches, etc. Now, Bryan Gil, I know he's loved and appreciated on this channel, and I too would hope that he comes good. But this mysterious back injury, I'm not buying it. I'm just saying, when it comes to, that's a side note for another day, but that's a little bit tinfoil hat. I have some theories that could be outlandish or could be spot on. Hugo Lloris had a back injury that mysteriously kept him out for the remaining of the season. But back to Manor Solomon. Really, he showed a lot of confidence on the ball for such a young kid, 23 years old. I know he had some matches that he played for Fulham last season and that got hampered by an injury. I think this kid could actually be that thing that we've been crying out for, which is impact off of the bench. Obviously, he occupies the same space as Heung-min Son. We don't know if he would like the right-hand side. As on one of my shows yesterday, someone said put Solomon in for Kulusevski because Kulusevski's been woeful. And I was very disappointed with Kulusevski yesterday. But I just don't know if Manor Solomon's going to do better on the right. He's very comfortable on the left. All the things I've seen him do well, he's hanging out on the left, cutting in on his right. We saw the beautiful shot, 30-some minutes into the match. Almost similar to that one that he scored for Fulham in the FA Cup. So he's got talent in that right boot. He has confidence to go forward. This was a Premier League side. It wasn't like we were playing, no offense, the MLS All-Stars or the Korean All-Stars or anything. This was a Premier League side. This was the first half when all the starters were very well rested. They weren't tired. West Ham did play most of their starters in the second half as well. But Manor Solomon, he didn't disappoint me, and I really felt like you're in there with the potential starting 11. Show me something. Show me why Ange wants to see you in that role first. And I think that he did that. So for me, I feel like Manor Solomon is the player we all want Bryan Gil to be. And we may have him, and they're roughly the same age, right? How old is Bryan Gil?
They could be around the same age.
21, 22, something like that.
Yeah, they could be similar age, to be fair. I mean, at around that age, they're all sort of in that sort of same sort of development bracket, you'd like to think. But with Manor
they're both
Solomon,
not big guys, but Manor Solomon doesn't play small. You know what I'm saying? There was a chance where he was on the left side, and I think he had the ball in the box, and or just outside the box near the touchline, and a defender had slid in, hit the ball, and he took the contact and stayed up and kept going and playing for the ball, kept it alive. And it's like, it was a moment like that where I'm saying, if that's Bryan Gil, I think he gets demolished like a tissue paper in that sense. Whereas Manor Solomon may have a little bit more thickness to him. Maybe that's what it is. A little bit more thick around the edges. He can hang with the big boys in the Premier League. I liked what I saw. Manor Solomon was very impressive. First 45. Obviously, Basuma, super impressive. I liked what I saw from Madison as well. But I want to shout out Solomon. That's a guy that, in the sense of this Ashley Phillips business, we're talking about going and getting the guy that maybe we're not all thinking about. The free transfer from a guy who's just had finished his loan from Fulham. He was back with Shakhtar, and who knows what's going on behind closed doors there. But this is the kind of business we're always talking about. Why didn't we do that, right?
Were you out of your seat originally though with the signing? Or is that now, like, just even after 45 minutes, you're just sort of like, oh, now I see kind of why we signed this guy? Or were you kind of excited about it maybe originally?
I would say that I was open-minded. I wasn't closed-minded to the idea of like, okay, to me, I like a free transfer. He was young, and the comps that I saw coming out, it showed that he has skill with his feet. So I'm like, okay, that's enough for me to say, let me see what you could do. That's enough for me to say, I'm not going to bash you before I've seen you in a Tottenham shirt. And I'm looking at it also from a realistic standpoint. We're always talking about we want someone who can play in the Premier League, right? Because that's our league. We want someone who's Premier League proven, but we also don't want an old bag coming into the squad. This guy's on a free. He's shown that he can come into the Premier League, score 3 games off the bench in a row for Fulham. He can do it off the bench. He's already shown that in another uniform. So I just want to see what he could do for us. Within that 45, he's kept the candle lit for me. I won't say that the house is burning down with the fires of Solomon, but the candle's lit, my friend. And I will say I'll use that candle to at least light another one for the second match, because I like what I saw in that first 45. I want to see another 45. Obviously, maybe the second 45 of Leicester City, maybe. Who knows? But I like he was very impressive for me in that first half.
He's on the Solomonster train, Dave.
Yeah, look, it's about time. I think many people are after the back of that, Sean. It was a very, very promising 45 minutes from the guy. Look, what I really liked about him is he showed sort of great, great versatility to his game. And what I mean by that, if you go back and watch the highlights, the amount of time he dropped deep to get on the ball, which we know he likes to do, but then he also mixed that at times by running directly in behind, which then gives your fullback an absolute torrid day because he doesn't know what you're going to do. And it's true to simple movements. You know, you can pretend to drop back, he tries to get ahead of you, you're sprinting behind, or you pretend to go in behind and then you drop back, and you also create that little bit of distance. And that is something that maybe Gil could maybe pick up from Solomon, that maybe Gil could learn off, and that would create someone like Gil that sort of space and time that he might need. But also what I liked about Solomon is he wasn't too predictable. He didn't just always want to cut inside and go on that right foot. He wanted to go on the outside as well, and he could. But also the way he linked up with Reguilon as well. Very, very promising 45 minutes. And I'm glad, to see him take the opportunity. What would it have been there if Son was fit and not off the back of a surgery? I don't think so. I think it probably would have been in the second 45. But, he's in a game that was tight. He has shown to me that he has enough in his locker to be able to unlock the door for us multiple times, which is what we've been crying out for. It's a far cry from Bergwijn and Lucas Moura, which I used to absolutely rip my hair out about, because you'd have fans going, oh, but they're not that bad. It's like, my God, I mean, I could pick up the ball and run straight into a defender and go, well, I tried. You know what I mean? It's absolutely madness. This guy, you have to have that technical ability, that skill, that close control. With some of them guys with a lot of the pace, they tend to knock the ball on ahead of them a lot, and it's very easy to defend against them. Whereas someone like Solomon, who maybe doesn't have that raw, explosive pace, he's technically better with his feet because he has to be, which gets him away from other defenders very, very quickly. Very rarely loses the ball. And I really like what I saw about the guy yesterday. For me, Mansion Solomon Monster, welcome to Tottenham Hotspur. And Jack, it's one that, look, over here, especially, myself and yourself, we didn't throw our toys out of the pram about it whatsoever. We sat there, we said, this is smart business, very smart business by Tottenham. You could tell, the guy that was at Shakhtar, the guy that played in them 2 group games against Madrid, that talent was always there. There wasn't enough spoken about that. People go, typical Tottenham signing. But, this is a guy that's just waiting for the right platform, the right environment to explode again and get his life back on track. It's not his fault. It was absolutely, ripped to shreds, and he had to restart all over again. It's nothing to do with him. And it looks like Tottenham's going to be that platform. And I think we're going to get a very, very exciting player going forward, Jacko.
No, I'm excited to see that Spurs have tapped into that sort of Eastern European market, if you will. I feel like there's always been sort of kind of diamonds in the rough over there, and it's just sort of whether you can do your homework and whether you can take a chance, and also maybe if the price ends up being like a bit of a steal, I think you absolutely go for it. I mean, the biggest sort of regret Spurs will ever have, I think, is not going after sort of those let's say, kind of a gamble of a signings of Kavicha or Kim Min-jae, who we're really heavily linked with. Both of them we were really heavily linked with, but because of, I think, the fact that there was that sort of quote unquote Levy's type signing that it was given during what was a very kind of tenuous, moment in summer with Daniel Levy, it might have been the case that I think sort of the Spurs hierarchy or whatever just sort of kind of didn't think it was maybe worth the gamble, and they maybe didn't even do enough of their homework sort of on the players to really feel like it was worth that gamble. But you look at the fact that I think Kavicha came from the Russian league, from like Rubin Kazan. Kim Min-jae originally came from, I believe it was the Chinese league, then came over to I believe it was Fenerbahce, right, and was kind of at least spending a year there. I think honestly, if we're looking for these, how would you call it, these sort of impact player type signings, these guys are maybe there in the background to sort of fill in for some of our more star players when they do go or when they're injured, something like that. I feel like Spurs should probably do a better job about kind of tapping into these sort of markets and finding these type of players. Even, look at Real Madrid signing, Arda Güler or whatever I think his first name is, from from Fenerbahce as well. I just feel like you can find some pretty steal of a signings when the market suits you, and also there may be players that get, I think, sometimes maybe a bit unnoticed or kind of get sort of kind of let's say just not given enough attention. And I'm excited to see that Spurs have done this. I think what's probably most impressive about Solomon is that I think he just has that really low sense of gravity, the way that he carries the ball and the way that he receives the ball. He stays really low to the ground, and that sort of makes him, I think, really tricky. Makes him also as well kind of hard to pick up, because like Dave said, when he's kind of dropping deep to pick it up, or when he's kind of running in behind, sort of like he's not really bouncing up and down or anything when he's kind of dribbling it. He's just sort of kind of staying to that really low sort of kind of speed and kind of touch. And his first touch, to be honest, is much better from first impressions than even Steven Bergwijn's or Lucas Moura's ever was, especially Steven Bergwijn's. I feel like Bergwijn, what he had was that decent finish, to be fair, every now and again, but it was just sort of like his first touch would always be like a bit off, and other touches he had, I felt like, would always be a bit off. Same thing with Lucas Moura, to be fair to him. Like Lucas Moura would have, a weird touch here and there that would sort of confuse you, whereas Solomon, I know it's a really big compliment. I've kind of said his sort of dribbling style, it's not like he's going to be anywhere close to this type of player, but his dribbling style is a bit similar, I think, to like Eden Hazard, to be honest. Like the way that he picks up the ball is just all, again, very shifty, very low to the ground, very low sense of gravity. And even some of the passes that he sort of played that were kind of those inside passes, to the edge of the 18, to those players that were kind of willing to receive it at the top of the 18-yard box, were, again, like very Eden Hazard-like. And even the way he cuts inside has those kind of curling shots on goal, also kind of very Eden Hazard-like. So I don't know, it's the highest of compliments I could give a guy, but I'm just most satisfied that Spurs have tapped into what I could say is maybe a market that we haven't done in the past, and I feel like there are a lot of starlets out there, and Solomon could be one of them.
Well, what I really like most about Solomon, Jack, right? Being a winger isn't hard, right? When the ball comes out to you, just get your first touch, get it under control, and then, go at your defender. That's what being a winger is about. What drives me mad and what's drove me mad over the last few years is anytime the ball goes out wide, it just comes back inside. That's not why people give the ball to the winger. The people behind the winger give the ball to him because they expect him to be the magic man. Get and beat your man, make something happen. And that's what I liked about Solomon. Every time the ball got into him, he drove at his man. Old-fashioned winger that gets you out your seat. And that's what I really liked about him. And the fact that he can go wider way against his man, he'll do for me. That's all I want. When the ball goes out wide, none of this shirking responsibility and punting it back inside, just like what Matt Doherty used to do at right wing back all the time. None of that crap. Get on the ball, get at your man, make something happen. And that's what's expected of you. And that's what Solomon done yesterday. Good old-fashioned winger, and that's good. And one thing you touched on, Jack, about the sort of Eastern European market, the likes of Russia and Croatia.
I'll just call it like markets that are even outside the Dutch league, outside Belgium, like, the markets that are far away, right? Like it could even be the MLS, for example, like it could be Mexico, it could be whatever, just leagues that nobody really watches, let's say. Leagues nobody
But they're not the markets I'm going to go into. But the ones like Croatia and Russia and stuff like that, like you were alluding to, that's what Tottenham used to do. We picked up Modric. We brought in Pavlyuchenko to help with our strikers and stuff like that. So there are markets that we have tapped into previously before and got some good signings out of. You've also had other clubs that used to do it in around there that brought in the likes of Nico Kranjčar and Čorluka, who also ended up at Tottenham and done a good job. So we need to go back and getting into their markets and having a look. Like Modric is the best one we've ever picked up out of there.
Yeah. Just quickly on that, though, too, and I think maybe what we forget is not everybody's going to have sort of the, privilege, you could even say, to be, brought into an Ajax academy, a Chelsea academy, a Man United academy. Like the pathway that you may have could be harder than others. And so guys like Solomon have had to come through, an Israeli academy, then his chances through Shakhtar, which is a very prestigious academy, to be fair, but it's, in the cold and it's very far away from home. And it's not as luxurious as you could say, like going to a Chelsea academy or something like that. So you have to, I think, look at some of these players, I think, sort of as the same, and the fact that, that's their pathway. That's how they've had to make a name for themselves. And, even Sadio Mane, right? He had to make a pretty crazy, I think, sort of pathway to get even to Southampton. He went from Senegal to like RB Salzburg, from there to like Southampton. Like, they have to, sort of sometimes certain players really make, a tough pathway to get to the top. So never rule them out, whatever league they could be coming from. They could be real talents. And
last thing to remember too with Shakhtar, he used to keep Mykhailo Mudryk on the bench on the left wing there. They occupy the same position. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. They spent $100 million and we got Solomon for free. And this guy got in ahead of him at Shakhtar.
Someone's got to make a song for that in the future. I was going to say, Dave, though, quickly, and then we'll kind of leave it alone with Solomonster. He did say he was going to be a better Hill Messi than Hill Messi. What would just be your rebuttal to that, just quickly?
Look, he's a year older than Hill Messi, so Hill Messi is a year behind him. But look, let's not forget, Hill Messi went out to Sevilla and done well. You know, the fact is, he just hasn't
And
had that
Valencia.
opportunity at Tottenham. You know, Hill Messi's a Europa League winner. You know what I mean? Like, for me, like, there's a player there. Other people in Spain can see it. You know, this guy was playing,
I mean, he was, to be
men's
fair,
football when he was 19 years of age. Like, there's a player there. The problem that we've had with him is that someone like Nuno didn't want to use him, but then, you know, Conte didn't want to use him, but then Conte started to use them and then shipped them out to bring in Danjuma. Why? What did Danjuma offer that Gil Messi couldn't? Gil Messi had more of an impact, you know, on them few games when he played against Crystal Palace, when he was coming off the bench in the Champions League and everything else, adding intensity, adding pressing, you know, getting on the ball, adding a bit of skill, a bit of flair. And then all of a sudden we ship him out and bring in Danjuma. Why? What was the point in it? There was no point in it. We should have kept Gil Messi and given them minutes. But the problem is, you know, people like Conte don't know what to do with someone like Gil Messi. And look, from what I was looking into the training videos, Ange Postecoglou looked very, very impressed with someone like Gil Messi in them training videos. Yeah. One touch, pressing, constant movement. We never stop. Whenever I hear Ange or them mottos being said, automatically Gil Messi starts ringing out of my head with alarm bells around it. Yeah. He fits into all of that. For me, I don't think Gil is one to feign injury. I do believe in the back injury. You know, the likes
I
of
saw a post on Instagram today about it.
Yeah, like the likes of other players that he's left at home with, like Fraser Forrester, Bentancur, all other people carrying injuries. It's not like what we seen yesterday's game where all of a sudden Dyer, Spence, people like that, no part of the squad whatsoever. And I feel if the club wanted to sell Gil, he'd be on that tour with the rest of them. Think about it.
I agree with you there, but what I want to say about Bryan Gil is he's never once given me the feeling like he wants to be here. He's liking posts. He's replying to comments on Instagram. They're saying you should come back to Spain, and his little hand emojis up and hearts and stuff. So I mean, it is an emoji, right? It's deciphering the emoji, the hieroglyphs of today's age. But really, I think he wants to be in Spain. I think he's comfortable being in his home country, playing in the nice warm weather. He don't want a cold rainy day at Stoke. I know he doesn't. He doesn't. That's just the vibes I get from him. At any chance he gets, he's always taking a loan to Spain. Say that again.
You say that, but he went to Selhurst Park. What was it, Monday night or Tuesday night? And he ripped it up.
Yeah, he left, South London,
It's harder place to go than Stoke.
But did he get a goal or an assist? I can't remember.
Yeah, he assisted Harry Kane.
Oh, he did. Yeah, oh, that's right. Okay, I remember. He was on the right, right?
Or something. Yeah.
Well,
because we scored 4-0, I think we won.
Maybe it is just a lack of experience, a lack of opportunities. But again, I looked at just like he's played 13 Premier League matches. I think he started 11 or 9 of them. That's just, I think that's enough of a sample rate to say, like, is this guy going to cut it in this league long term? Can he come in and be a flash in the pan? Bergwijn could come in and do a flash in the pan. Scored a game winner versus Man City. Got us the brace versus Leicester City to win the game. So I'm not saying he can't do something like that. I just think he's one of these guys like a Giovanni Lo Celso. It's maybe a perfect segue, by the way, that are more comfortable playing in the La Liga type of league where things, you're playing your Mallorcas and your Alons or whatever. I don't even know the team names. Marbella. They don't. I'm not saying Gil Messi can't do it. I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet in the amount of Premier League games that he's got, and that's mostly what I want is someone who wants to be here. And I just don't get those vibes that he wants to be here with some of the social media play that I've seen him do. But that is again, I do like to be as brutally honest about it. I am biased slightly about the Bryan Gil thing because we were linked heavily with my man, the one and only. He's also Spanish. He just happens to be someone you can't push off the ball. Technically, you can't even grip the guy. I'm not going to say his name, but we were linked with him.
He's 10 times the player than Traore will ever be. He's got more talent in his little toe than Traore. Traore is a glorified bodybuilder with sprint speed. That's all he is. He offers absolutely zero end product whatsoever.
He's got end product versus Spurs, though.
Straight line and give him the ball, no problem. He'll get you from one end of the pitch to the other in less than 10 seconds. But ask him to cross that ball. Ask him to, start being technical, 1-2s. He ain't your guy. That's why we didn't go for him, and that's why we brought in Gil Messi. Because
to be fair as well, though, like at this moment in time, this would be the worst time to buy Traore because
absolutely.
The majority of the time we're going to be playing against teams that are just going to be sitting back against us. So he'll be just running into a a divider every single time.
Yeah,
I don't know how
With
bad
race
Traore
car.
is. We didn't even want to buy him for a right wing, which is his position. We wanted to buy him for right wing back. That's how bad he is.
well, he did score the game winner versus us last year. Lest we forget, he did have more goals in all comps than Richarlison and Gil Messi last season. But I do agree with you. My opinion at the time was, if we had gotten Adama Traore and the amount of verticality threat, just the threat of him down that right hand side would naturally open up pockets of spaces for Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, the players who we want finishing. And I didn't want Adama for his finishing. I just wanted him for his speed. And I just felt like, okay, Gil Messi, show me something that we couldn't get just as easily, because it would have been cheaper to get him. We would have been able to then sell Lamela and then make the net even lower. Instead, we made Lamela a part of the deal, and then we just shipped him back so he can go win a medal with them. That's just the business part of it. So I do have, I try to be as honest. When it comes to Bryan Gil, I'm a little bit, like the cup's already dirty that I'm drinking out of, right? But it's not his fault. It's my club's fault in the way that we handle, because I'm like, okay, we spent all this money on him and we shipped Lamela the other way. Show me something, and then we end up sending him the other way. So it's like all these things are working against him in my eyes, that aren't necessarily his fault. So I do like to try and preface everything I say with that I am a little biased.
Somebody who I'm. Oh yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I get that, but you still want to give Tanguy 10, 11 chances. So how can you write off Gil so quickly?
I don't want to give Tanguy any more chances. I think I was enough. I saw the first 45 hit with Romero. It's not going to work. We need to figure out who Romero's partner is. There are some people that haven't been, like Kulusevski.
Oh,
I'm
sorry,
almost
not,
at my
not
end with.
Tanguy and Ndombele. I mean,
Tanguy
you talk about
Ndombele.
giving him, numerous chances. He's done more to deserve no chances than what Gil Messi has. But then you have that like towards Gil Messi. I feel it's just like, if you're going to give Ndombele all them chances, then get off Gil's back, because he hasn't walked off or trudged off against Morecambe. He's actually tried on the football pitch to help this club.
You're right. That is a very correct point. What Tanguy did, not a lot of players have done. You can't even say Giovanni Lo Celso has done that. Yes, he's gone out there and trotted around for 90 minutes. So you could say that might be equivalent to that, but no one has done what Tanguy Ndombele has done. My whole spiel with Tanguy Ndombele is, if Ange can create such a 180 in a fan like me and a fan like a lot of fans who are now believing something is cooking, we're getting some, if he can cause that a shift in the fans, surely he's the man, the last chance man who can get a shift out of a guy like that in Tanguy Ndombele, a shift in his mentality. That's what it's not so much that I have faith in Tanguy to do it, because obviously I don't. With Jose Mourinho, that should be motivation enough to go out there and work your ass off. It's a special one, but he couldn't, and he didn't, and he showed what he showed. Same thing with Conte, same thing. So my feelings here with Tanguy Ndombele is, if Ange can't get him to want to play, then that's it. I don't want to see him again. Let's get him out the door as soon as possible. And this whole preseason thing, all this fluffing up, it may just be so we can sell him, kind of like the Giovanni Lo Celso thing.
Yeah, the PR machine of Tanguy is working very hard.
Jacko, let me ask you quickly. I mean, Jacob says, he doesn't buy into the back injury and he could end up being sold. Look, my theory is, Jack, that, if he's being kept at home, I think he's staying, because for me, they brought everybody on preseason tour to put them in the shop window, and they didn't bring Gil, even though he might be fit by the time they get back or anything like that. So what's your thoughts on that?
Good point.
I originally was expecting Hill to sort of want to leave and not really want to, feel like he's going to give Spurs another chance, because the way I sort of see it is that he's just been kind of thrown around during a very, chaotic time at Spurs, and was signed at probably the worst possible, sort of summer, and then kind of just got thrown into sort of what you would say is like these tidal waves of changes, and that just sort of got forgotten. It kind of felt like in it. But the fact that he just today, I saw on his Instagram story, was posting pics of him kind of in the recovery room at Spurs, and then he's also changed a lot of his profile pics and a lot of his sort of Spurs, sort of pics, back to the top, because originally he was like all over gooing and gawing over Sevilla and like kind of almost, basically making it as if as much as he could, made it look like he was a Sevilla player more than he was, a Spurs player. He's kind of done the opposite, and he switched it all back to now a bunch of his Spurs stuff. And, he's seen posting pics of him and Reguilon, posting pics of him and Romero. I think him and Basuma have even had like a few pics together, sharing stories back and forth. So what I'm getting is that he's at least happy to be here and he's enjoying himself during training. Does that mean he has a future here? That's another question, right? That's whether actually Ange is actually taking him in and accepting him. I think what maybe we could sort of talk about, though, is that the players that are getting all these second chances, third chances, fourth chances, what they kind of sort of all have in common, at least, is that they're all highly technical players, or at least we all perceive them to be very highly technical sort of players where they can, be able to find that pass. They can, operate in those half spaces better than other players can. They have that sort of extra second on the ball more than other players do because their first touch is always, on the money. And then they also have that vision that, that other players might not have. And I think that's part of the reason why people feel like people like Gil Messi are going to be able to make it in Ange's system, because he hasn't had the chance to be able to play in a high possession, highly technical type of, style of play. And that's the same argument people have made with Tanguy Ndombele. Hasn't had the chance to really play in a highly technical, highly possession-based type of system. And a lot of the Gio Lo Celso lovers, who I'm kind of like maybe how you're sort of biased towards, Bryan Gil, I'm very biased towards Gio Lo Celso. And that a lot of, people who really rate Lo Celso feel like this is the right system for him to be able to thrive in, because it's a very highly technical, highly possession-based type of system. So it's going to be interesting which one sort of Ange throws out. I think there's a greater chance that it's going to be Tanguy or Gio that gets thrown out, because we've already signed James Maddison in that sort of number 10 kind of hybrid number 8 role, as the creative midfielder. And it feels like Tanguy or Gio are likely going to play in a similar position as either, next to him or kind of back up to him in some regard. And it feels like you can't really have both of them around. They're both on really high wages as well. And they have at least some sort of sell on value of some kind. So I think what's interesting is which one is going to swim, which one is going to be able to, do better than the other between Tanguy and Gio. Whereas if you look at Bryan Gil, we don't really have all that many wingers. We did kind of need to have, Lucas and Danjuma around, just even though like the Danjuma signing we questioned just for squad numbers, we did need to have those extra wingers and those extra forwards at the moment in time. If we were to sell Bryan Gil, I think we would kind of need to replace Bryan Gil with somebody else, either with like an Alfie Devine or somebody from the academy or whatever, but it does need to be replaced just for squad number purposes. So I think if Bryan Gil is kept around, and he has a greater chance of being kept around, I feel like, because there's kind of less competition for whatever role I think he is competing for. Whereas you look at maybe Tanguy and Gio, that midfield is actually kind of jam-packed at the moment. Like Højbjerg is even kind of technically competing for their position right now, because we know Højbjerg, can fancy that box-to-box role. He might not do it in such a sexy way as they do, but he's pretty, effective. He's done it for Denmark, and he's done it for us in the past. So it's going to be interesting. Like you look at the midfield as more of a traffic jam for all these kind of different players that we want to have this redemption arc and we want to see be given, a bit of love, whether it's Bryan Gil, whether it's Tanguy or Gio. I just feel like Tanguy or Gio are going to be, likely the fan bases of them. One of them is going to be left unhappy more likely than I think Bryan Gil. I think Bryan Gil is going to be kept around just because the competition's not really as good.
Yeah, the right wing needs some competition. Kulusevski's not performing, and we need someone to be pushing behind him to say, hey, look, if you keep this kind of performance like I saw in that first 45, this guy's coming in. And if it's Bryan Gil, long may it rain. If it's Alfie Devine, we were speaking about first touch earlier. That's a note that I kept. Alfie Devine could, from the switch of play, I think it was coming from Udogi or Perisic, way over first touch, corralled that ball perfectly. And when we talk about these forward players needing to have that first touch, maybe Alfie Devine is a good shout. I don't know. I would like to see more of it before I say anything about Alfie Devine. But Bryan Gil, I'm totally fine if he wants to come in and compete and have someone pushing Kulusevski to be better, because we have to have that.
I think if you hate Bryan Gil, then you just have to replace him then. Like, that's my thing, is that you do have to, because he is sort of playing in this position, like you said, to compete with Kulusevski, as well to also maybe compete with other sort of forwards and maybe other kind of, in a way, some people believe he could even operate a bit deeper and maybe play a bit in that midfield if need be, as more of a creative type midfielder. So it's just sort of like I think he would need to be replaced at the end of the day if he were to even be
Absolutely.
sent out on loan.
Or
And that's
or
where the
injured
problem
if this
lies.
back injury is a lingering back injury. I have my back hurts. Them things you never know. You could be fine tomorrow and then 6 p.m. the next day it's flaring up. So if that lingers, I absolutely agree. We have to replace him with some kind of attacking striker because Solomon was to replace Lucas. If Hill's the replacement for that Danjuma number, Bergvine number, we have to figure that out if he's not going to be able to play.
Dave, anything to say on
Yeah.
I think we can transition then to maybe, I don't know, like, are you satisfied, Dave, with the fact that maybe so few academy talents were brought? I mean, we just mentioned Alfie Devine. He is actually one of technically the academy talents, but he's been actually playing with the first team for some time, or at least training with the first team. So I'm led to believe for some time, even when Antonio Conte was around, because of so many injuries, he was actually brought up or at least promoted to the first team. Do you feel like you're a bit disappointed that so many players were left behind that could have been real academy talents? Or is Ange doing like what I've called it, the swim test, for every player?
Look, Ange walked in here and he said he's going to give everyone a clean slate. So if he's going to do that, he has to bring everybody, right? I think Hugo Lloris is a bit different because he probably went to him and just said, look, I'm out of here regardless. I'm done. So I'd say that's probably a little bit different in that case. But look, also from a club point of view, when I look at it, Jack, I mean, last year, for instance, right, last year Conte made a load of them like Ndombele, people like that. You're not going on tour. So if you're a buying club or you're someone that's interested in that guy, why would you come in with cash? You don't need to because he's surplus to requirements anyway. So you will get that loan deal. You don't have to pay cash for him. So by bringing him on tour, it puts the ball in the shop window. And it means if clubs do come in and they're interested, we're not automatically on the back seat of the negotiations where they'll go, we'll take him on loan. We can just turn around going, hang on, no, he's part of our plans. You're going to have to pay cash.
Give them the
so
illusion.
I understand it to that degree. But where I'm disappointed is, it's like there's just no progression in certain areas of the pitch. And I just feel someone like Dorrington should have been brought.
Was that necessary? Just to stop you there, was that necessary? I think that logic makes sense with like Gio, Tanguy, players like that, right? It's sort of that the logic does sort of fly, but maybe less so with the center backs because it's like everybody knows that Spurs needed to get center backs anyway. And it's like the center backs we already have, like, what money are we really going to get, even if they did, have some extra value that they earned or something? Like the fees that we're hearing for Sanchez really aren't all that much. What we would get for Dyer, I think, would be a similar amount. What would be get for Ben Davies would be a similar amount. So what's sort of what are we holding out for? I feel like that makes sense with other positions, Dave, but less so with center backs.
I agree. Do you know what it is, though, Jack? It's the wages, it's the sticking point. It's not to do with the money. We will recruit anything we can get from them, but it's the wages, and that's the sticking point. Clubs that have them are interested in these all come from lower leagues where they don't have Premier League money, so they don't have them wages to be able to offer these guys. So, these guys can just turn around and go, well, look, I've got 2 years left on my contract. Why would I move anywhere? I'll just take this money.
Sanchez is a prime example of this. Jacob, what do you make of that? Like, he's just rejected moves not even rejected moves. He's just waiting till they meet his wage demands. Strasbourg has come in from France just, today, I believe, or at least announced, in the last 24 hours. Galatasaray. I think there was another,
Spanish clubs
another
too,
Super League
right?
club, Spanish clubs maybe too, and that club out in Russia. So there's been at least 3 to 4, I did think, different clubs that have submitted a bid to Spurs. Spurs are willing to probably accept almost anything to get him out the door so that they can get the center back process rolling. But everything we keep hearing is Sanchez, his wage demands have not been met by the asking club, by the buying club. Is it frustrating?
Yeah, and Dave's spot on. If we didn't bring him along, why would Galatasaray then? They say, "Oh, we'll give you 6 instead of 12." It's not such a priority to get them in the door because they're not doing anything anyway. So I do agree with that. As far as Sanchez's wages not being met, I mean, when you sign a contract's there for a damn reason. And when you sign it for X amount of years, getting paid X amount of dollars, you're well within your right to sit back and say, well, you ain't met my demand, so I ain't moving anywhere. So I don't blame him personally as a father, as a husband. Yeah, I don't blame him for doing that. But I think he's a unique situation where, as a mental health standpoint, maybe better for him to move on. If he's getting booed on the pitch, booed off the pitch, his family's coming out saying how much that hurt their feelings and stuff like that. It may just be better if, you know what, I take a little bit of a pay cut here, but that's the thing, he doesn't have to. So even if it's like, I don't want to go to Spartak Moscow or whatever, and take a pay cut and go to Spartak Moscow, maybe no thank you. I've never been. It's probably a very lovely place, but I just see it from his standpoint, like, I'm sitting comfortable. Why would I need to leave? So I don't blame him for that. That's just that's our fault. But it's one of those examples where we took a gamble on a guy and it just hasn't worked out. But there is still value there. And I think that taking these guys like Dyer and Davies, the people that I want to see shipped out, Dyer before Davies, let me clarify. But taking them out there to me is, you know what? I've seen them. We've all seen them. We've had enough of them. But has Ange? Maybe Ange is just leaving the door open to, hey, I'm putting the cookie right here in my hand. Whether you can jump this high and get it, it remains to be seen, but I'm at least giving you the chance to compete for it. And so maybe that's what it is, plus a little bit of the window shopping thing, because like Dave said, you can't just, like what Conte did. Notice all the players he left behind that he didn't want to take, none of them got bought. It was all loans. So I think that's a major issue, and definitely something because I wanted the extra 5 for whoever, 10 for Winks.
You know what though? With two things there, Jacob. I mean, the thing on the Sanchez, right? So not wanting to accept their wages. He's well within his right, fine. But that guy will never succeed at a high level in football if that's what his motivation is. If your motivation is not football, because if things weren't working out for me at a club and my motivation was football, I would accept the pay cut to go and get my career back on track. And many players have done that before. And that there shows me, then what's the point of bringing these guys on pre-season tour if that's what they're in the game for, and football is not their motivation. You know, no wonder why the guy slipped up there yesterday and cost us yet another result yesterday. You know, and it's like we can sit here and, you know, go, oh, you know, make all the excuses for these guys in the world, make all the excuses for the club. The reality is we know what business needs to be done. Be proactive and go and do it. All this is another exercise to see if we can get away with making other signings in the transfer window. That's all this is. And the reality is, the guys that we know are not good enough, some of the guys that have been shipped out on loan, the reality is their motivation isn't football, their motivation is money. And they're never going to succeed and bring Tottenham Hotspur to a place where the fans want it to go with that sort of mentality, with that sort of attitude. So that's why I can understand why Ange done it. I can understand why the club would allow Ange to do it. However, this is the last summer I'm going to allow this to rock. If we're in the same situation next summer with the same guys, I'm not taking any more of this bullcrap from the club or anything like that. And I will make sure I'll sit here and I'll demand no more of this. You've tried telling them they're not a part and they're still here. You've tried bringing them all on to try and get resale value. They're still here. And I'm not having it any longer. The only good thing I will say about what's to come from this is we have 35 people in the squad. We have to whittle that down to 25. So at least, you know, 10 of them have to go, which is a good thing. It's a fantastic thing, in fact. But it may be in their right as a player, but if money's their motivation, they're not right for Tottenham Hotspur. Simple as. Because we're a club, especially as a fan base, with ambitions to win trophies. Not excuses, not sitting here on money. Simple as.
Well, I was just going to add as well, though, that we've often blamed Daniel Levy for not selling these players and not, you know, being able to move them on. But it has maybe come to light, at least maybe the last kind of year and a half or so, that maybe we have received bids for some of these guys, but it's just been very much the case that these players have put their foot down, whether they even have a spot in the team or not. Like, even if they're just going to warm the bench for 3 months, they seem to be very content with that and happy to take that sort of role, as long as it means that the wages are met and that they're going to continue to fill out the contract. And Jacob's right in the literal sense that every person, if you were in their shoes, would probably kind of do the same if they were much more concerned with maybe where their financial state is and their future and, you know, their, you know, children's future, etc. But at the same time, when we've been talking about, you know, why is it that Spurs can't get rid of the deadwood? Why is it taking so long to get rid of the deadwood? It's also part of the players' problem, that why we can't get rid of the deadwood, because they're not eager to leave by the looks of things. So if they're not eager to leave, then it's very hard to move them, because they're going to need to have their wages met by the asking club. Most of the asking clubs are not going to be able to meet a Premier League player's wage demands. And then also they're going to be probably asked to play some sort of, like league or maybe some sort of club that's, maybe beneath, where they've been playing. They've been playing in Champions League, Europa League, high stakes Premier League matches. And all of a sudden, you're the center back for Strasbourg and, League One, or you're the center back for Spartak Moscow. That's a huge sort of kind of a, how would you put it? Maybe to your own sort of ego, a bit of a, it wouldn't feel so good. So the fact that you're losing wages and you're also going to be playing for what is essentially a less prestigious club, or at least a less watched club, they're going to just put their foot down and say, you know what, I'm actually going to stay here. Thank you very much. And that's,
Maybe
again, like, I know Levy needs to put his foot down and needs to then just rip up the contracts, but you have to sympathize, because that's like, you are trying to get rid of them, and then they're making it even harder. It's like you come up against one roadblock, which is Daniel Levy's stubbornness. Then you come up against another roadblock, which these players' reluctance to even leave the club in the first place.
But it's his fault, though, Jack. Just quickly on that. That's his fault. He offered them long-term contracts and upped their wages a lot. Me and you, when we went through looking at how many contracts Winks was
contract renewal,
sometimes one season after another at times, increase in wages. And then you wonder why these guys, how do you put Eric Dyer in a position to be on 80 grand? Davies in a position to be on 85 grand. How are they in that position?
No,
Davies tied up till he's 32, 33 years of age at Tottenham. This guy, I've accepted, he ain't going anywhere. If I'm Ben Davies, even though I'm not good enough to be there, I'm staying there. I'm earning that money till retirement. If I want a couple more years of football, I'll drop down the leagues then, and then I go and play. But right now, with retirement on the horizon, I'm taking that wage. But that's Daniel Levy's fault. He thought, I'll offer them, wages. I'll keep them around. It's going to save me money. Well, it's backfired, because not only does he have to pay them, now he has to go and pay to replace them. So hopefully he's also learned a lesson.
Jacob, I'm sort of thinking about like kind of players that maybe just quickly, I feel like maybe might not actually cut it, and I've been talking about the sort of swim test, that Ange, I think, is giving all these players, because that's what I think he meant by the clean slate, and what sort of Dave meant by it is that sort of every player that's coming in here, whether they're good enough or not, whether we already know they're good enough or not, they're just going to be given the same swim test that everybody's given, to swim in the pool or not, to swim in Ange's pool. And some players might surprise us, that will pass it perhaps and will be kept around. But do you feel like there will be some players that maybe will be cut out, that maybe won't pass the swim test? And two of them I'm kind of alluding to are, I feel like Skip is somebody that could maybe not pass the swim test. And I feel like he might just be kept around because he's still very talented, still very young. But like the fact that he was playing this sort of like higher up number 8 role, I was a bit confused. I thought he had a pretty good actually first 10 minutes and had a pretty good first impression, but I just sort of thought, like, when we actually get into real Premier League matches, knowing Ollie Skip, that's not really his good position. He looks always a bit uncomfortable up there. And then as a number 6, this is supposed to be Basuma's kind of main character season, and if that's going to be in the number 6, let it be in the number 6. So I'm just confused if Skip, maybe Tanganga, another homegrown player from the academy, will these guys be able to pass the swim test?
For me, Tanganga showed me yesterday what I love about him and what frustrates me so much about him. And I'll just real quickly cover over Tanganga.
Go ahead.
Defensively, he showed brightness. He showed moments where open field, open play, Jared Bowen, arguably their most dynamic player in their attack, and he straight out shuts him down. The guy's rubbing his thigh, it's hurting, but he dispossessed him cleanly. And I'm like, nice, Tanganga. But then I see Tanganga on the right-hand side with the ball, and there's 2 people around him, and he tries to be Lionel Messi. So it's like, on the ball, he's not very good. He's suspect in the air. That's why they got one of those goals over his head. He can't, the same problem we always have. A man glances in front of you, no one picks him up, and he gets the header over you. So if you're going to allow the man to get in front of you, at least beat him in the air. And Jaffa can't do that, as we saw yesterday. And then passing, he doesn't know what he wants to do. And I think in Ange's system, you have to be thinking of, this is option A, this is option B, this is option C, before you even receive that ball. Because what they've been harping on in training is faster passes, more passes, forward passes. And you saw times where he receives the ball and he's like, should I go long? Ooh, should I go here? Ooh, he's kind of like,
yeah, I actually think that's more him not trusting his ability, actually. I think sometimes I saw him, like, he saw some switches of play that he could have made, and he just didn't make it because he was like, I might make a mistake, and,
Yeah.
and I don't trust myself to really do it. And that's like also, again, this whole swim test that like he's not passing it at the moment. I also just,
There's no
before you go
way.
on again, he fouls. Like I counted in the first half, he had over 4 fouls in the first half, which is also like, that's just not going to fly in the Premier League. Like you're going to get a yellow card at that stage.
Typically, if you're pulling on people like that, it's like in the UFC when you're grabbing the cage to try and pull yourself up. It's desperation mode. You're just trying to survive in that moment, and I don't like that in a defender. We don't need that next to Romero. It did not work next to Romero. And I just think there's no way Ange Postecoglou is going to watch that tape back and say, yeah, there's something he has defensive qualities. So as an outside team, not playing in an Ange system, maybe a low block system, you could say, there's reasons I could want to bring this guy in because defensively he can do it. He's a great defender, but on the ball, he doesn't need to be passing the ball. He doesn't need to be carrying the ball. And hopefully you have someone who can protect him in the air. That's kind of where I'm at with Tanganga. I don't think he's good enough for what we're trying to do. I don't think he suits the system. And much like Skip, it's like I'm playing this position to try and get in the squad, but everyone can kind of see this doesn't suit what I'm good at or what I'm comfortable with doing. Oliver Skip, for me, showed again he's just not good enough. Sarr showed me more in the second 45 than in the same role than I saw it from Skip.
Yeah, they played the same position. Too.
And he was confident going forward. He give me the ball, boom, boom, I'm going through, guy, pass it back. Now hit me with the 1-2. Papa Sarr was looking like an animal out there. I think Skip, love the kid. I think Angel like him. I think Angel keep him around because he's going to run. He's going to dive and bleed for that shirt. And that's some of the things we love about Skip. But quality-wise, I don't think it's there. I'd rather see some more Papa Matasar work with the first squad than Skip, personally.
So are you worried then to see Papa Matasar linked with a loan, today?
I do not want that. I do not want that. He's so bright. He's such a bright young kid. I think you got to keep him around us. We want him to play for us. We don't. Yes, I understand loan deals. You want him to go mature and like develop. And yeah, he's a little skinny, but that he plays strong, man. He doesn't play like a skinny twig. He plays like a thick log, and I love that long, lanky player. And he plays so strong. There's a lot of talent in that kid. There's a reason why when we got him, there was French scouts and all these other scouts saying, "Wow, y'all really got one good." There's deals like that in Udogie that we did, and then we loaned him back, right? Because the club didn't want to get rid of him, but we want him to be ours in the future, and I like that. It's the same thing with Udogie that I saw. This is why we let this guy go sit away for a year, because we'll wait for you to get here, whether it's Antonio Conte or not. This man, he said I played left back originally, so but. These are players that I think impressed, and Skip, I think he's got to take some reps with the second team. He's got to go with that second four. I want to see someone else in that role. To me, from the second half, who stood out in that role was Papa Matasar. So that's just my opinion, though.
No, I agree with a lot of that. Dave, Skip, Tanganga, are they passing?
I'll start with Skip. Look, for me, what one thing people don't talk about is in these friendlies, they're not physical. Not really any pressure on you. But Skip still didn't stand out on the ball, did he? You know what I mean? When you come to the Premier League, like we've seen last season, when they press him, he's just not capable. But even in a game when no one's pressing you, it's a preseason friendly, no one's getting stuck in, you should be able to show some sort of talent. And for me, he didn't do anything. I see it around a lot, actually. People sort of praising Skip's performance yesterday. Oh, he got forward. We barely touched the ball, in my opinion. I don't think he
made a lot of runs into the box. Like this like he was asked to do a lot of things, like, and he was following instructions, but him following instructions doesn't maybe mean he had a great game, right?
Yeah, but Jack, I mean, we could hire you and tell you to sprint into the box 30 times. You have
hire me to run straight into a defender. Like
exactly. You have to affect the game. You know what I mean? On the ball, and I'd argue we're playing with a midfielder down because he didn't do anything on the ball. He didn't come looking for it either. And that's probably part of the struggle we had in the first half as well in breaking down that West Ham team. Whereas when you look at the second half, Jake is right. And Papa Matasar on the ball, delicious touches, spraying it around.
Gio running it.
If you had him there in the first half, we would have cut West Ham open. So for me, Skip still has a lot to do, and I'd rather keep Papa Matasar. When it comes to Tanganga, look, I'll be honest, as frustrating as it was, I'd still rather him play there than Sanchez, Ben Davies, or Eric Dyer for the rest of preseason. And at the end of the day, these are the options the club gave us, so we can thank Daniel for that. You know, and
yeah.
just quickly, just with Tanganga's biggest problem is he has no left foot. He's playing on the left hand side. So every time he got the ball, he was touching it with his right side. It was slowing it down because he was having to adjust his body. By then, the passing was blocked. The passing line was blocked off, which meant he had to keep coming back. So he also slowed it down. For me, I'd like to see him kept around as a Romero replacement because I'd like to see Romero shift over to the left for the time being and put Tanganga on the right and let him use his right foot and see what he's like. But although I was expecting maybe a bit better and I wasn't overly all impressed with him, I found myself very frustrated with him because he'd been given the opportunity and I don't think he took it. I'd still rather him than anybody else.
I kind of agree with that. That's why, despite all the criticisms we have for Tanganga, it's sort of like he did not impress me, and he left me actually more worried than he did like confident. But I sort of thought like with what the system looked like and what the shape looked like and how much space there was behind them, I was like, yeah, that's not going to fly for Eric Dyer. That's not going to cut it for Ben Davies, and that's not going to cut it for actually Clement Longley, to be fair, if we brought him in. That's way too much space in behind him, for them to get him on a counterattack. And what Tanganga did, which you mentioned earlier, Jacob, was when he needed to make a challenge in sort of that counterattacking scenario with Jared Bowen, he was able to stick a foot out and actually make a challenge. Whereas Eric Dyer, countless times last season against Leicester, as well as against Man United, where the big exposés of when he is countered in those positions, he just sits there and sags and sags and sags and drops back, and never ends up making a challenge. Whereas Tanganga did make a few blocks and a few challenges and also has that recovery pace to be able to get back there, to be able to catch up with the guy, which was what we found out was actually kind of necessary. I didn't really take that as seriously with Ange's system when I first thought about it. I was kind of thinking like, well, Longley's really good on the ball, so it shouldn't really matter because he won't lose the ball. So why would it really matter if the ball gets knocked behind him? But with how far we really were up the pitch at times, you really can get exposed by the Jared Bowens of the world. And so I am thinking you do need somebody still with enough pace and enough recovery speed to get back there just in case. But the problem is with Tanganga is that he's giving it away far too often, and he's playing far too many hospital passes and dangerous passes that do lead to these counterattacking scenarios. Because when the team is starting to push higher up and then he gives it away unnecessarily, you're going to put yourself under unneeded pressure. But he can get out of it maybe more than an Eric Dyer would, because Eric Dyer still would make that same pass from time to time. Eric Dyer, I think, is not as good on the ball as people make him out to be. He also plays a lot of hospital passes and also plays a lot of dangerous passes that would lead to similar counterattacks. But Eric Dyer wouldn't be able to handle the counterattack, I think, as good as Tanganga might, and neither would Ben Davies. Ben Davies, I think, despite being left-footed, is just also a bit sort of like what you mentioned, like doesn't have any clue what he's going to do when he's actually on the ball, sort of just makes simple passes that really are of no consequence and isn't really able to try to break the lines with it. So I don't really have confidence with him either playing left-sided center back, and he doesn't have the recovery pace. Neither does Sanchez. Is just, I mean, it's just not really worth even talking about. And then with Joe Rodon, I mean, he's also shown he wasn't really good enough on the ball, at least technically. And I don't know if he really has that sort of recovery pace. I think he has that ability in the air. I think he's not bad in the air, but he's definitely not going to be able to have the recovery pace either. So Tanganga is still the best option, but he also exposed, I think, a lot of what we actually need from that left-sided center back. They need to be quick, but they also need to be able to also not foul 4 times in the first half. Like that was a real bad sign with Tanganga, that he needs to foul players in order to make a challenge. That's not really going to also be able to work, I think. So there were a lot of question marks, but it still, I think, showed what we're going to be asking of that center back. And it's going to be a lot. It's going to need to be somebody that's athletic enough to challenge, these counterattacks, but also good enough on the ball that they're not giving it away all the time. And they're actually confident enough to carry it out of the defense and things like that. So I don't know. Tanganga really exposed a lot for me. Skippy, I would say, like, just quickly, he did play that flick to Basuma, for that awesome, would have been, kind of goal. What, maybe was his highlight of the match, I think. But I agree with you, Dave. Felt like Skippy was just doing the instructions correctly, but he wasn't really actually doing all that much with what he was actually being asked to do. So that's where I would, with Tanganga.
I felt like we were carrying Skip, if you want me to be brutally honest. You got to contribute on the ball.
and you look at what Sarr did in comparison and what Gio did, and the fact that it was a 3-man midfield that were sort of all doing their job, very well. You saw how much we were able to run West Ham more. I get it, they were more tired, but same time, like that midfield was running the show in comparison to before. The midfield was actually struggling in the first half, you would say, to begin with. So that's a fair point. But I think we'll leave it there, everybody. And Jacob, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for, trapping yourself in this cage with us, in this elevator with us. We'll now let you free.
I'm always, hey, keep the doors closed. Let's hang out a little bit longer. That's how I feel. So thank you for the invite. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks. Thank you.
Everybody, do check out his channel. If you didn't already recognize him, you probably recognize him from those post-match fan shows that we were running last season. Do check out him and Michael's channel over at USA, United Spurs of America. They do some great work over there. I know they try to go live as much as they can. I know they lead some busy lives, but I think they do keep up the content pretty regular, and that's thanks to people like Jacob. And I find it to be pretty relaxed, pretty good place to go hang out and just chat Spurs, and a lot of people that you probably recognize, like I think Paul Osper and people like that you see over there too. So definitely a familiar place if you haven't been there already, and the link will be in the comments and in the description, everybody. But I think we'll be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
And the big Ange we trust.
Trust.
See you, everybody.